Okay, guys, so we've given it a little bit of time, and I'm not sure if anyone's looking to join up with me here live in the meeting. So what we're going to do instead of building live solutions, is we're going to go into probably a couple of basics to getting started with integrations and automations in Plutio. So what we'll do is we'll actually get into my Plutio account, and I'll show you some of the tips and tricks on how to get connected with Plutio between your account and some of your automation tools. One of them I've got is Zapier. We've also got Integromat. We've also got Integrately, and then Pabbly. I don't typically use Pabbly. It's not one of the ones that I personally specialize in, but the other three are. So we'll go into those. I can offer directions and some guidance inside of Pabbly, but like I said, I don't use it day to day or with a lot of my clients, so I'm somewhat unfamiliar with a lot of its workings, although for the most part, the four of them are somewhat similar, and they do pretty much the same actions depending on the product. But regardless, we'll go in and get into each and show you how to connect to Plutio from these tools, how to set up the API manager instance if you're unfamiliar, because that's how you connect your Plutio account with all these tools. So that's where, if you were talking to me about building something, or if we did a build live, we would do that regardless. We would have to do that to start anyway. So we'll go over some things with that, some of the advantages of using that with Plutio, and we'll go from there. And then if anyone decides to join, we might get into an automation build itself, figure out a use case, possibly build something for them either in their account or in one of my demo accounts, and then we'll get something solved. Otherwise, we'll go into some of the basics for this first session, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so let's log into Plutio. Okay, from here, once we're inside of our Plutio account, what we're going to do is go down to the settings. And again, this is best to do in a browser. You can do these things inside of an app, like a mobile phone app, or even one of the many desktop or client-side apps, but my recommendation is to do it from the web. So go down to settings. You'll see in settings here, regardless of whether or not you have white label or not, you'll see API Manager. Now, it looks confusing at first, and I have a bunch of them built for both myself and for my clients that I'm doing Plutio work for, but you'll see each of the instances that are tied to your account, regardless of whether or not you're in your workspace or not. You'll see these instances that are tied to your account. So for mine, I've got a few with my company, Datalytyks. I've also got a couple with one of the clients that I do work for, but I also have more down the line here that you can see for different uses. Also, if you pick up the Plutio extension for Chrome up here, it'll also set up another instance for that. So if you notice Plutio extension in your API Manager list, it doesn't have anything inside of it. It's just what they use to connect your account to the Plutio browser extension. I don't know if it's available in other browsers. I know it is for Chrome. Okay, so from here, if you don't have any and you're starting fresh, what you'd want to do is create a connection. I recommend for my clients and for folks that I'm doing this kind of work for to kind of set up either a naming convention or a way to decipher and to organize your different connections. What I would get into with somebody building a solution through Plutio is one of the big ones right now is using form responses. I've got a couple of videos out on the community and on my YouTube channel for handling form responses through different automation tools, and the one that we focus on is form response.create. So what I have them do is I have them deselect all of these except the ones tied to form responses right here. But in this case, what we're going to do is just leave it all open or all non-scoped, so to say. So leave them all unchecked. So as is, out of the box. And then what I like to do is, if you're doing work for multiple clients, or if you're someone that provides a service, set up a company name. Like for me, I do my company name, and then I'll do the data tool that I'm connecting to, or not the data tool, but the integration tool. So I'll do Integromat, for example, but for this use case, we're going to go to Zapier. So Zapier, and then I'd also specify what it's used for. For this case, we're going to do a general connection, or one that's wide open. So for example, this one has all of the endpoints, and these are called API endpoints. I'm not going to go into that because it's a little complex, but just know that these are all the endpoints that you can connect to inside of your Plutio account to do work from an integration tool. So I leave it unscoped, general. Make sure the version is the latest, 1.9, although you can specify the API version if you'd like, if you're using a custom solution or building an API call and you want to use the 1.8. I wouldn't recommend 1.7, but it's available. You can also specify other workspaces that you want this to be tied to. I don't have any of my connections tied to any other workspace at the moment, but I can if I would like. The other option you can put in here is a webhook URL. What that entails and what it's used for is when we're doing instant actions and things inside of, for example, Integromat that utilize an instant action and relies on a webhook to retrieve data from, that's posted from Plutio. You would put in that webhook, turn it on, and then that integration or that automation is now listening for that webhook data. For this purpose, and what I'm going to show you on how to connect your two accounts, we're not going to do that, and I'm not going to mess with that right now. That's for a somewhat more specific use case than what we're going to do right now. You do also have an option to add another one, but again, I'm not messing with webhooks in this little intro get started video. From here, like I said, leave all of your endpoints deselected so that they're green. You don't have to, and by the way, you don't have to specify a workspace name if you don't want to. If you're just a single use client or customer that has their workspace and they just want to customize their automations within their workspace or company, then just leave it like this. You don't have to specify a brand name or a workspace name by any means. I just do because I utilize multiple workspaces and clients. So from here, go down to create. Now what we see are client ID and client secret. Depending on the tool that you're using, for example, Integromat, when you connect a new account to Integromat within Plutio, their modules, it requires the client ID, the secret, and your company's subdomain, which if you don't use white label, you won't notice it up here because I'm on the white label plan. But if you notice it up here, it'll have your company name, abc.plutio.com. What they need is the portion before the .plutio.com section, which is your subdomain. So when you're connecting to Integromat, they'll need those pieces of information. So we're going to go back into Zapier, and again, this is the more popular automation platform, so we'll start with this. And you can do it either through My Apps. You can either create a new connection if you already have one set up. I have a bunch right now, but if I wanted to create a new one inside of Plutio, I could. Or you can do it right here through the dashboard. Say you wanted to connect Plutio with, for example, itself. You could do it this way. Set up your actions, and you're basically building an integration from this user interface right here. So what we'll do is just do it through the apps right here, since I'm just showing you how to connect an app to Zapier. So we'll go add a connection. Again, that's right here. My Apps, add a connection. And we'll look for Plutio. Find the app. Okay, so now Zapier is again asking for this same information. So what I was mentioning before is what we need. Client ID, client secret, the identifier, and that's the subdomain of your account. And then if you want to specify a connection. So what we'll do is go back into Plutio itself. And now we need to highlight this, or you can copy and paste it like highlighting or some other means. I'm not sure what you have set up, but I'm going to copy it, Control C with my keyboard because I'm on a Windows computer. Go back into here, paste that information in, and do the same thing for the client secret. Client secret. Paste it in. Now it's going to mask it. This is called a mask when it makes up the dots. But just know that once you paste it in, it's correct. If you're unsure or not confident that it was correct, just delete it and either paste it again or type it in manually. It's fine. The business identifier, again, I'm on white label, so I would put in here consulting. For your case, if you're not on white label, you would put in your company. So if I wasn't on white label, my subdomain would be datalytyks.plutio.com, but I don't need the .plutio.com. I just need that subdomain. But for my sake, it's consulting. Now connection label, again, you can label this however you'd like. It's kind of the same idea as it was inside of Plutio. I am connecting this API connection to a general or a descoped use. So there's no conditions of what it can or can't do. I didn't limit it in any way. So for my case, I would set this as Zapier general, or you could also label it as general, or just general, or something that's similar to that where it's unscoped. Yes, continue. Okay, so we hit this error, which is fine. It's not a problem. What this is telling us that the business consulting is not enabled for this client. So we'll go back. And if you hit that and you're, this would happen if you're on the white label, put in that datalytyks subdomain. And there we go. We're now connected. So now we can see inside of Zapier that I've got Plutio Datalytyks, which is one that I've had for a little while. And then this one I just added, which is Plutio General. From the way that Zapier or the Plutio team built their integration inside of Zapier, it looks like they add a label before what you put in there anyway. So that's why you see in this instance, I've got Plutio General. I specified Plutio General, but then when they built the app inside of Zapier, they put in the word Plutio before whatever you input. So if you see it double, it's not a problem. You can always rename it right here, edit connection name. So you can either get rid of it entirely or just put back in Plutio. Okay, so that's how we would connect to Zapier. There's nothing else you need to do inside of this connection. Just keep in mind and bear in mind that if you change these in this connection itself that we just connected to Zapier, it will reflect that when you go to build automations or build workflows. And by that, I mean, if you start to unclick things and you're trying to do certain things inside of Plutio with this connection, say, create a person or create a task, but you've deselected that from this connection, you won't be able to do it and it'll either throw errors or it won't work. So just keep in mind, if you're going to use this as a general connection, leave it open, leave it general. If you want something that's scoped, again, go back, create a new one, create a different one that's descoped, like tasks only or form submissions. Like right here, I have as a demo account, I've got it tied to a demo account inside of Integromat that only focuses on form responses. So if you see here, I've got everything deselected except the form response options. Okay, so what can we do with this? Now that we have the app connected, we can then go back in and start working inside of Zapier to build an integration. So we can do things whatever we want, whatever your use case is. Connect Gmail to Plutio. And let's say you want to build an email to Plutio task creation. You can do a new email, create a task. So what that connection does is now allow you to go in and start building this automation or building this workflow so long as you have Gmail connected. Okay, so that's Zapier. Now let's go over Integromat. So the first thing we needed to do as part of this is already done. For Zapier, we need to do the same thing for Integromat. So we'll create a connection. We'll go datalytyks, Integromat, general. Again, leave everything the same. No webhooks. I'm leaving this all open. Create. Now I have what I need here. We're going to go back into Integromat. And you can do it one of a couple of ways inside of Integromat. You can either do it through the connections page, and this just lists you the connections. But the main way to do it is here through the scenarios. So if you're on the dashboard, go through create a new scenario. Plutio. Continue. You don't have to go through this screen, by the way. That's just a way to pre-select any modules you want to use or apps you want to use. Select Plutio. You can choose any option here. These are all of the different things you can trigger off of or that you can do. So for first one, let's just do watch projects. Where we're going to actually create the connection is right here. So I already have a couple of connections inside of this Integromat account, but I want to create a new one. So what do? I click add, and you'll see a pop out here. The connection name, again, this is inside of Integromat. So we'll do Plutio general. I'm going to label it 2 because I have more than one. So client ID, again, we need that specific client ID, and keep in mind they're not the same. So the one that we just created inside of Plutio for Zapier is not the same as the one for Integromat. Now, if you ask, well, why can't I use the same? You can. You can use the same client ID and client secret. But the way I like to organize my API manager instances and connections is so that I know what I'm connecting to. And I do that when I'm building integrations and automation so that I can keep track of where I've connected my Plutio account. Because if I've got it tied to Zapier, Integromat, Integrately, in more than just one solution or one platform, then I'm going to lose track, or I'm going to have things working inside of Integromat as well as Zapier, so that can be messy. So for what I do, I like to recommend building more than one connection. So again, we go back into here, grab the one we just created, client ID, back into Integromat, paste the client ID, client secret, copy that, paste it. In the subdomain, like we just experienced in Zapier, if you're on white label, it needs the standard subdomain that you set up for your account before you put on the white label. White labeling is just somewhat of a mask, so you don't, I spoke a little bit off track there, but you don't need your actual white labeled domain, you need the legitimate subdomain. So for mine, it's datalytyks. So we'll go continue. It verifies. There we go. Now it's connected. So now when I go to work within Plutio inside of my Integromat account, I'll see this connection, and that's why it's good to label them, because I know that this is my demo form response only connection, which if I look inside of Plutio, right here, this connection is tied to this connection inside of Integromat. Okay, then I can start doing what I need to. You can set up your actions, you can set up your scenarios however you want, do this, do that, whatever you need, you're off and running. Where you can manage that connection then is inside the connection window itself. So right here, I've got 3 inside of Plutio, the one I just created, the demo general one, and the demo form response one. So if you want, you can quick verify to make sure that the connection is working. Or you can also delete it if you have more than one or created one on accident or double created one as well. So that's Integromat. Again, you can do that connection right here from a scenario. And if someone else has a different way of connecting to an app outside of creating a new scenario, let me know by all means. I'd love to learn. Okay, so now we're going to jump into Integrately. So here, what we're going to do is find Plutio. And what we can do here, let's just do something generic. Form is submitted, create a task. So we'll go. Now inside of Integrately, you can use a pre-built recipe, they call them, which is up here. So if you're connecting more than one app, so if I'm connecting Calendly to Plutio, I can use this pre-built recipe, and it's pretty much a one-click integration so long as your apps are connected to your account inside of Integrately, which is pretty cool. So if you're someone who's not technical and doesn't like to do a lot of the stuff inside of the automation, just simply use this. If it's pre-built as a recipe, use it. If not, you're going to have to actually create it in the builder. But if it's already built, like right here, Plutio and Calendly, right here, they've got a ton of pre-built recipes for you to use. And they've got, looks like 2 pages of them between bunches of different apps. So when an event invite is created in Calendly, create a task in Plutio. That's pre-built for you inside of Integrately. So we're going to nix that one off of our list. I'm going to go back down. And again, this is just to connect to the app itself. Create task. And I want to select the automation builder. This is just to pretty much go live right from that one click. Automation builder. And right here, we're going to see the add connection button inside of Integrately. So add connection. And what we need to do is go back inside of Plutio and again create a new connection. Connection name, datalytyks, Integrately, general. Again, leave everything else alone. We don't need to touch any of that. Create it. Now we have our client ID and secret again. Go back into Integrately, and it's asking for the subdomain. So again, the subdomain, datalytyks, the client ID, right here. Paste that in. Client secret. Copy it. Paste it. And again, these are just masked values. Know that they are correct, but if you're unsure, go back and either manually type them in or recopy and paste. Continue. Okay, and it's showing that I have more than one connection. I do have an actual live connection inside of Integrately, but I've also just added this demo or test one. So this one was created a couple of months ago, but I can then rename this one. So Plutio, or we'll go demo account. Now we'll start building our integration or building our actual automation inside of Integrately with this connection. All right, so those are the 3 more mainstream or more popular tools. I know a lot of people like Pabbly, so we're going to jump into that next, but please know that I don't use Pabbly very often. So if I kind of fumble through this, please bear with me. We'll get through it together, I guess, but just know that I don't typically use this app or this tool in my day-to-day operations. So I'm assuming we can connect to it through a workflow like we did with Integrately and with Integromat. So we'll go test workflow. So then we'll go and choose an app and we'll find Plutio. So it looks like Plutio isn't able to trigger off of anything inside of Pabbly. So we'll just go with the generic webhook. go down here to the action, which is where Plutio resides in the action set versus a trigger set. So keep in mind that if you're using Pabbly, it looks like in their app right now, they aren't able to trigger off of things inside of Plutio. So when we go to create this new connection for Pabbly, what it looks like the platform is limiting us to is not being able to trigger off of something. So what I mean by that is if you want an automation or something to work off of, say, a form response or a task completion or some kind of action from Plutio, know that Pabbly as it stands now is not able to do that from a trigger standpoint. So you can see that right here. If you're trying to choose a trigger app, it's not letting you select Plutio because there's nothing inside of Pabbly to trigger off of. So just bear that in mind if you're creating automations or integrations or things like that. A good way to do this, and I can go into this detail later, but a good way to do this is through a webhook. You could set up an integration with Zapier or Integromat, and this is kind of a two-part, cross-platform integration, if you will. But you'd set up your trigger inside of Zapier or Integromat, or even Integrately, and then push that to a webhook through what we call the post method. So the post method then would put that data in a one-step action inside of that beginning platform, and you would put this webhook into that action. I know that's confusing, but you're pretty much taking the data from that first trigger action and then setting it up here through Pabbly. And you would continue the rest of your workflow through Pabbly based off of this webhook trigger. That's a way to do it, to make two platforms talk to each other, is through webhooks. Okay, so from here, it looks like we're able to connect right here through Plutio. So the action, what do we want to do is the action. We'll create task. So now once we select something, we'll connect it with Plutio. So I don't have any existing credentials right now, so I have to create a new one. Again, it needs the client ID and the secret, and then the business subdomain. So we just created one here. Copy the client ID. Copy the client secret. The business, again, mine. Even though I have white labels set up, I still need my basic or my core pre-white label subdomain. So datalytyks, which is your account default subdomain. Save. All right, so now I'm connected. Now I can start doing what I need to inside of Pabbly with my workflow. What I need to, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's how I would connect all four of those tools with my Plutio account. And again, it seems a little cumbersome or redundant to have multiple API connections, because with what we just did, I just created 4 of them. But as I explained earlier, it's a good way to organize if you're using multiple tools. Like if you're pretty heavy set on Pabbly, or if you have a lifetime subscription for them or some kind of deal with them and you really want to stick with Pabbly, but again, you're limited to not being able to trigger off of something in Plutio, well, you kind of have to go two-way automation. So by that I mean set up like a free account with Integromat to actually conduct your trigger action, and then communicate that through a webhook to Pabbly, and then begin the rest of your workflow building or your automation. So this is, again, a good way to keep track of what you're using inside of your Plutio account, because this, I can see all the connections I have that I've built for people or that I've built for myself. So I know that I've got an extension, I've got all these different API connections, that if something goes wrong, say in Integromat, and a scenario dies or a workflow fails, I know that it's connected to one of my Integromat specific connections, be it my general or my form response, so I can really narrow down where it's coming from, and then I can begin my investigation and troubleshooting. Okay, well, I think I'm going to call it quits for this session today. We didn't really get into an actual automation build, but if any of you guys that are viewing live, or if any of you have signed up and want to build an automation with me, please reach out and we can go over that one-on-one. I will be hosting a next session of this on the 19th of March, skipping the actual 2-week schedule. I wanted it to go every 2 weeks, but I have to skip on the 12th. So we'll be picking it up on the 19th, and then we'll be going that next week to continue our 2-week cycle. So I want to continue this every couple of weeks to keep people informed, keep people excited about automations. And then when Leo and the Plutio team decide to drop the automation feature, I'm sure we'll be able to set up a session and do some session work with folks about that as well. But that's in the future, that's coming, but stay excited for it. I know I am. But in the meantime, we can use all these tools to help us build automations inside of Plutio. And if you guys are curious or want to see it, please reach out. I've got a pretty cool scenario built inside of Integromat that uses just Plutio forms to start a whole bunch of business operations for my business. Okay, see you guys next time. Thanks for watching if you're watching the recording. Thanks for viewing live if you're live on Facebook. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.